He thought the deed was fake. He said it with a laugh, like I'd printed it off a home printer and taped my name onto the bottom. And for a moment, I almost let that laugh scare me. Because when someone sounds that certain, when they stand in your doorway with a locksmith behind them and a folder full of papers, your body doesn't ask whether they're right. Your body just hears one word, home, and it starts preparing to lose it. It was a bright Thursday in late August when Caleb Rhodes showed up at my porch again, sunglasses on, jaw tight, holding a manila envelope like it was a weapon. Behind him stood a locksmith with a tool bag and the tired eyes of someone who'd been lied to for a living. Caleb didn't knock. He tapped the envelope against the doorframe, slow and smug, like the sound itself was supposed to make me step back. "Morning, Tessa," he said. I kept the chain on the door. I kept my voice even. "You're not supposed to be here." He smiled wider. "I am now." The locksmith shifted his weight. "Ma'am, I have an order to change the locks." My stomach dropped, hot and fast. Caleb leaned in, lowering his voice like we were sharing a secret. "I told you, you can't hide behind a fake deed." Fake. That word hit different when it was spoken on my porch, because 2 months earlier, in a courthouse where the air smelled like copier toner and old coffee, a judge had stamped final on our divorce. And Caleb had walked out grinning like he'd kept the trophy. The house, he said, would sort itself out. He didn't mean peacefully. He meant eventually. It would be his. He'd been saying it for years, long before we split, long before the first attorney letter, long before my daughter learned to watch adults the way animals watch thunder. "You're living in my asset," Caleb used to say when he was angry. "Not my home, not our child's home, an asset." And that morning on my porch, with a locksmith waiting for instructions, I realized he had finally decided to cash in on the threat. So I did the one thing I'd trained myself to do since the day I filed for divorce. I didn't react the way he wanted. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't step back. I looked straight at him and said, "Show me the order." Caleb's smile twitched. He liked fear. He didn't like questions. He slid a page out of the envelope and held it up like a magician showing an empty sleeve. "See? Court order. Possession. You're done." I stared at the seal. It looked real. It looked official. It looked like something that could turn my life into boxes on the curb. And then my eyes dropped to the case number. It wasn't ours. The number was off by 2 digits. A cheap mistake. Made by someone who thought I'd be too scared to notice. I lifted my phone and started recording. Caleb's eyes narrowed. "Oh, don't be dramatic." "I'm documenting," I said, like my attorney told me to. The locksmith cleared his throat. "Ma'am, if you're saying this isn't valid..." "It isn't," I said, "and the man who hired you is under a no trespass warning from my counsel. I'm asking you to step off my porch." The locksmith looked at Caleb. "Sir?" Caleb's jaw tightened. He tried to recover the swagger. "It's valid. She's stalling." I kept my voice soft. "Call the number on that order," I said to the locksmith. "Ask for the clerk. Verify the case." The locksmith hesitated, then pulled out his phone. Caleb's hand shot out too quick. "That's not necessary." The locksmith flinched. "It's necessary for me." Caleb stared at me, breathing harder. The calm on my face wasn't calm inside. It was discipline. It was my mother's voice in my ear years ago, warning me that men like Caleb didn't leave you with dignity. They left you with paperwork. And this time, the paperwork was mine. Because the truth is, The legal anchor of my entire life had already been set. Not in that fake order. In a deed recorded 3 years earlier that Caleb had never bothered to understand. The house on Juniper Hollow Lane wasn't a mansion. It was a 2-story colonial with a narrow porch and hydrangeas I couldn't keep alive no matter how many YouTube videos I watched. The kitchen was a little too small, and the stairs creaked in winter. But it was the place my daughter Harper learned to ride a bike in the driveway. It was the place I painted the living room yellow after my father died because I couldn't stand gray anymore. And it was the place Caleb thought he could take, because his name used to be on the title. Caleb had always loved the sound of his name on paper. He loved contracts when he was the one holding the pen. He ran a small construction business, the kind that survived on charm and promises. He'd sell people a dream, then complain when reality demanded receipts. When times were good, he called himself an entrepreneur. When times were bad, he called himself a victim. I met him in my late 20s when I still believed like confidence meant security. He was funny. He was attentive. He remembered my coffee order and the name of my dog. He told me he wanted a family, and he said it like a vow. We bought the house 2 years after our wedding. My credit was stronger. My job at the hospital was stable, and Caleb's income was a moving target. The lender wanted both of us on the mortgage, but the truth was, my pay stub carried the deal. Caleb didn't mind. He loved the optics. He loved telling people, we bought a house, like he'd built it with his bare hands. And for a while, I let it be ours, until it wasn't. The first time I saw the real Caleb wasn't during the divorce. It was during a refinance attempt he made without telling me. A letter arrived from a title company, addressed to both of us, asking for signatures. Caleb found it before I did. He hid it. He lied. And when I found the email later, he said, I was just exploring options. Options. Like our home was a pawn he could slide across a board. That night we fought, and he threw the word deed at me like a curse. I'm on the deed, he shouted. You can't do anything without me. I remember standing in the kitchen, Harper asleep upstairs, my hands trembling around a dish towel. I remember thinking, this is what he believes love is. Leverage. A week later, my mother called me and said, come to my attorney. Don't argue. Just come. My mother, Linda Morgan, had been divorced twice and never fooled by a pretty smile. She'd raised me to be kind, but she'd also raised me to be prepared. At her attorney's office, she didn't waste time. My down payment money wasn't a gift to Caleb, she said. It was a gift to my grandchild's stability. The attorney explained something called a separate property agreement and a quitclaim transfer. He explained that if Caleb ever became a threat to the home, his interest could be transferred voluntarily while things were still calm, while he still thought he'd never need to fight. I remember the shame I felt, like planning this meant I'd failed at marriage. But my mother looked at me and said, planning isn't failure, it's protection. We drafted it carefully. Caleb was offered a fair trade. My mother's money would be documented as my separate contribution, and in exchange, Caleb would sign a quitclaim deed, transferring his interest to me, with language waiving partition rights and acknowledging the separate nature of the down payment. Caleb scoffed when I told him, your mom thinks I'm a thief? I think she thinks you're impulsive, I said. He rolled his eyes and signed anyway, because in that moment, he still believed he was the one in control. He still believed I'd never leave. He believed a signature was just ink. He didn't read the deed. He didn't ask about partition, He didn't notice the waiver. He didn't notice the recording instructions. He just signed, joked with the notary, and walked out of the office like he'd won an argument. The deed was recorded that same week in Franklin County. And for 3 years, it sat there, quiet, waiting. By the time we divorced, Caleb had forgotten about it completely. Or maybe he remembered it like you remember a bad dream you refuse to interpret. Either way, when the judge issued the final decree, Caleb assumed the house was still half his, because that's what he wanted to be true. And when you want something badly enough, you start treating it like fact. In the first month after the divorce, Caleb tried the polite route. He texted me at night, pretending he missed Harper, pretending he wanted closure. Then he slid in the real request. "Let's sell," he wrote. "Split it, easy." I didn't respond. He tried again. "I'll be reasonable. I just want my share." Still nothing. So he escalated. He sent his sister to my door with a folder. He sent an investor to offer cash. He sent me a screenshot of a listing draft with my home's photos pulled from an old MLS record. He called my lender pretending to be me and tried to change mailing addresses. And every time I logged it. My attorney, Marisol Chen, told me, "The law is paper, but judges are people. People believe patterns." So we built the pattern. By mid-September, Caleb stopped pretending. He left a voicemail at 1:46 a.m., his voice slurred, angry. "I'm going to make you leave. You hear me? You can't keep what's mine. That deed is fake. I'll prove it." Fake again. That word was his lifeline. Because if the deed was real, his entire plan collapsed. So he committed to the lie like it was oxygen. And that brings me back to my porch. The locksmith, the fake order, and Caleb's smile. The locksmith's phone was on speaker now. A bored clerk answered, and the locksmith read the case number. There was a pause. Then the clerk said, "Sir, that case number is not a possession order. It's a small claims matter from 2019. Caleb's face changed. The swagger cracked. His eyes flicked to me, then away, like he wanted the world to stop watching. The locksmith swallowed. "So, there is no order to change locks?" "No," the clerk said. "If you're being asked to do that, it's not authorized." The locksmith's shoulders slumped. He looked at Caleb like he finally saw him. "Sir, I'm leaving." Caleb stepped forward, voice sharp. "No, wait. She's lying. The deed. I'm not getting involved," the locksmith said, already backing down my steps. Caleb's eyes burned. When the locksmith's truck pulled away, Caleb turned to me alone now, and his voice went low and ugly. "You think you're safe," he said. "You're not." I lifted the chain, opened the door just enough to speak clearly, and I said, "My deed is recorded. If you come back, I call the police." Caleb laughed, loud and wrong. "Recorded? That piece of paper? It's fake, Tessa." I checked. My cousin checked. The internet checked. It's fake. The internet. That told me everything I needed to know about his legal research. He walked off my porch and muttered, "See you in court." And the thing is, he meant it. Within 2 weeks, I was served. Not by a sheriff, by a kid in a wrinkled polo shirt who looked like he still lived with his parents. He handed me a thick envelope and said, "You've been served," like he'd rehearsed it. Inside was Caleb's petition to set aside the deed, along with a request for partition, along with a motion for temporary possession. He had filed it like a man throwing spaghetti at a wall, hoping something would stick. Marisol read it in her office, eyebrows lifting higher with every page. "He's claiming fraud," she said. "He says you forged his signature." "I didn't. I said, voice tight. I know, she replied. He also attached an expert opinion from a notary blogger. A what? Marisol stared at me for a beat, then exhaled through her nose. Okay, she said. We're going to teach him what real evidence looks like. The first hearing was scheduled for mid-October. In the weeks leading up, Caleb escalated like clockwork. Every 3 or 4 minutes of my life, it felt like something new happened. A car idled outside my house longer than it should. A cash buyer called again. My neighbor texted, "A man is taking pictures of your porch." Harper came home from school and said, "Dad told me you're stealing." That last one cut deeper than all the rest, because Caleb couldn't move the law, so he tried to move my child. I knelt in front of Harper in our living room, my hands on her shoulders, forcing my voice to stay gentle. "Sweetheart," I said, "sometimes grown-ups say things when they're mad, but I'm not stealing. I'm keeping us safe." Harper's eyes were huge. "Are we going to lose the house?" My throat tightened. "No," I said. "We're not." I hoped I was right. I believed I was right. But belief wasn't what kept the locks on the door. Paper did. So Marisol and I did the boring, relentless work. We pulled the county record. We pulled the recording stamp. We pulled the notary journal entry. We requested a certified copy. We subpoenaed the notary. We didn't just have a deed. We had a trail. Caleb, on the other hand, had vibes, and men like him mistake vibes for proof until a judge embarrasses them in public. In Courtroom 5B on October 14th, Caleb showed up wearing his best suit and his best smirk. He brought his mother, Diane Rhodes, who sat behind him like a jury he'd already won. He also brought a new attorney, a flashy guy named Trent Walters, who talked fast and smiled like he sold timeshares. Trent stood and said, "Your Honor, this quitclaim deed is clearly fraudulent. My client never intended to transfer his interest. He was misled, and the document appears suspicious. Suspicious. Because Caleb thought it was fake." The judge, Honorable Elise Garner, held out her hand. "Let me see the deed." Marisol handed it up with calm hands. Judge Garner read silently for a full minute. The courtroom grew so quiet I could hear the air vent. Then the judge looked up at Caleb. "Mr. Rhodes," she said, "is that your signature?" Caleb stood. "Yes, but—" "Is it your signature?" she repeated. "Yes." "Was it notarized?" "Yes." "Were you coerced?" Caleb glanced at Diane, then back at the judge. "No." Judge Garner nodded once. "Then the deed is presumed valid. Your petition to set aside requires evidence of fraud. Do you have evidence beyond speculation?" Trent launched into a speech about intent and fairness. Judge Garner cut him off. "Intent is not a substitute for reading. Fraud is a serious allegation. Where is your evidence?" Trent faltered. "We have concerns about the notary's practices." Marisol stood. "Your Honor, we have the notary's journal entry and affidavit, the certified county recording, and a separate property agreement signed contemporaneously. Additionally, Mr. Rhodes has repeatedly harassed my client and attempted self-help eviction." Judge Garner's gaze sharpened. "Self-help eviction?" Marisol submitted the fake order, my porch video, the locksmith's affidavit, and call logs. The judge's mouth tightened. She looked back at Caleb. "Mr. Rhodes, do you understand that manufacturing court documents is illegal?" Caleb's face flushed. "I didn't manufacture anything. Someone gave it to me." "Who?" the judge asked. Caleb hesitated. Judge Garner leaned forward. "Mr. Rhodes, who gave it to you?" Trent jumped in. "Your Honor, my client is not admitting—" "Sit down," Judge Garner said, sharp enough to slice. Trent sat. Caleb swallowed. A friend, he muttered. Judge Garner exhaled. This court is denying your motion for temporary possession. Any further harassment will result in sanctions and a protective order. Additionally, Ms. Chen, file your motion for attorney's fees. Marisol nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Caleb's smirk was gone, but the war wasn't, because losing in court didn't make Caleb stop. It made him smarter, or at least, it made him sneakier. He couldn't win by claiming the deed was fake, so he tried to make it look fake. After that first hearing, Caleb didn't retreat. He regrouped. He started showing up in places that weren't my porch, because he knew cameras lived there now. One Monday, he called the HOA and reported my unapproved paint color, even though the association had never cared, until his complaint arrived in writing. A week later, code enforcement left a door tag about overgrown landscaping, the kind of petty pressure designed to make you feel watched. Then he tried something meaner. He went to Harper's school. The office called me at work and said, Ms. Morgan, Mr. Rhodes is here requesting an unscheduled pickup. My hands went cold. He can't, I said. He has no custody time today. The secretary whispered, he says you're withholding, and he has paperwork. I drove there. Caleb stood by the case, smiling at the receptionist like he belonged. Harper wasn't there yet, thank God. But the message was clear. Make a public scene so I'd cave later. Marisol had told me, never argue, just anchor. So I lifted my phone, called the local line, and said, someone is attempting to remove my child without authorization. Caleb's smile vanished. He backed up, palms raised, reasonable. Because bullies love soft targets, not witnesses. And that was the turning point. The moment the story shifted from divorce drama into a legal and financial trap, Caleb didn't see coming. It happened the week after the hearing. I got a call from a title company I'd never heard of. Ms. Morgan? A woman asked, voice cautious. We're calling because we received a request to verify title and obtain payoff information on your property. My blood ran cold. From who? There was a pause. From Mr. Caleb Rhodes. I gripped the phone. He has no interest in the property. We saw the quitclaim deed, she said. But Mr. Rhodes claims it's fraudulent and that he has a court filing pending. He requested we proceed with a refinance application. A refinance application? I echoed. Yes, she said, for a cash out. We flagged it because he attempted to submit identification and a power of attorney. A power of attorney. My throat tightened. That's not real. We suspected, she said quietly. The notary stamp looked inconsistent. The file metadata was odd. I closed my eyes. Caleb wasn't just calling the deed fake. He was trying to create new fake paper to override it. Marisol's face went still when I told her. He's committing mortgage fraud, she said. I whispered, is that good for us? Marisol's smile was thin. It's good for the truth. We requested the title company's documents. We asked for the power of attorney copy. We asked for the notary information. We asked for the email chain. What came back made my stomach twist. The power of attorney had my name typed incorrectly. Tessa Morgan. And it claimed I authorized Caleb to act on my behalf for property transactions. The notary stamp belonged to a notary who retired 3 years earlier. Caleb hadn't just escalated. He'd crossed into criminal. Marisol filed an emergency motion and a report to the lender's fraud department. She also did something that made my heart pound with both fear and relief. She requested a forensic document examination. Because if Caleb wanted to argue paper, we would bring paper that argued back. The months that followed were brutal. Caleb didn't stop calling Harper. He didn't stop leaving messages through relatives. He didn't stop driving by. And I didn't stop logging. Every 3 or 4 minutes of my day, the fear tried to return. But I trained myself to replace fear with procedure. Breathe, screenshot, forward, save, breathe again. In December, Caleb's attorney filed another motion, claiming new evidence that the deed was not properly delivered. Marisol laughed when she read it. "He's Googling," she said. Then she slid a new document across her desk toward me, a certified letter from the county recorder. Inside was a notice. Someone had attempted to file a document against my property, a deed correction that would have reinserted Caleb's name. But the recorder's office flagged it because the notary seal was invalid. Caleb had tried to literally rewrite the county record. He thought the deed was fake. So he tried to fake the county. And that was the moment we stopped defending. We started hunting. Marisol subpoenaed Caleb's communications with the notary he used. She subpoenaed his bank records for payments tied to the attempted refinance. She subpoenaed the title company's fraud file. She subpoenaed the phone records tied to the email address used to submit the power of attorney. The discovery was a slow drip, but each drop was heavier than the last. In February, we deposed Caleb. He walked into the conference room, acting like he still owned the air. He sat down, crossed his arms, and smirked at me like he was bored. Marisol began gently. "Mr. Rhodes, you claim the quitclaim deed is fake." "It is," Caleb said confidently. "You admit it bears your signature." "I signed something," he said. "I didn't sign that." Marisol nodded. "So you're claiming your signature was copied?" "Yes." Marisol slid the notary affidavit forward. "The notary recalls you. He logged your ID. He has your thumbprint." Caleb's eyes flickered. Marisol continued. "You also filed a power of attorney containing Ms. Morgan's name authorizing you to refinance her home." Caleb leaned back. "That's not my document." Marisol tilted her head. "So you deny submitting it?" "Yes." Marisol slid an email printout across the table. "This email account submitted the document. It is tied to your phone number. Here are the provider records." Caleb swallowed. Marisol kept going. "The submission included a driver's license scan. It matches the one you used to open your business credit card." Caleb's attorney shifted. Marisol's voice stayed calm. "Mr. Rhodes, did you attempt to refinance a property you no longer owned?" Caleb's jaw clenched. "I was trying to protect my interest." "What interest?" Marisol asked softly. Caleb stared at her, breathing hard. Marisol slid a new exhibit forward. "And did you pay anyone to notarize this power of attorney?" Caleb snapped. "No." Marisol nodded. "Great. Then you won't mind telling us why your bank records show a $2,000 payment to a mobile notary service 2 days before the submission." Silence. The court reporter's keys clicked like rain. Caleb's attorney leaned in and whispered something. Caleb's face went red. Marisol waited, patient as a trap. Finally, Caleb muttered, "I paid for document services." Marisol asked, "To create a power of attorney?" Caleb glared. "I don't know what they did. I hired them." Marisol's eyes sharpened. "So you hired someone to create documents, to help you refinance a home you claimed was yours, while also telling the court a deed transferring your interest was fake." Caleb's confidence leaked out of him like air. That deposition was the point where the story crossed the 70% mark, where Caleb's fake deed narrative collapsed under the weight of what he had done trying to make it true. Because now we weren't just defending the deed, we were proving fraud. And fraud has consequences that divorce doesn't. In March, Judge Garner scheduled a sanctions hearing. Caleb showed up looking different, less smug, more hollow. Trent Walters looked like he hadn't slept. Diane Rhodes wasn't there this time. Marisol presented the forensic report. The power of attorney signature was traced, not mine. The notary stamp was counterfeit. The attempted deed correction contained an invalid seal. The email submissions tied back to Caleb's devices. The bank payment showed intent. Then Marisol played the final piece. A recording from the title company's fraud department. A call Caleb made, where he said, "I just need the payoff so I can cash out before she locks me out." The courtroom went still. Judge Garner's face hardened. "Mr. Rhodes," she said, "you have accused the respondent of fraud while engaging in fraud yourself." Caleb stood, voice shaky. I was desperate. Judge Garner's voice was flat. "Desperation is not a defense to criminal conduct." She looked at Trent. "Counsel, you filed motions based on false claims. You will answer for that." Trent swallowed. "Your Honor?" Judge Garner held up a hand. "Enough." Then she turned back to Caleb. "Sanctions are granted. Attorney's fees, costs, monetary penalty, protective order extended. No contact with Ms. Morgan except through counsel. No contact with the lender. No contact with the recorder's office. And this matter is referred to the county prosecutor for review." Referred. It landed like a physical sound. Caleb's shoulders slumped, like the word itself weighed 100 pounds. After court, in the hallway, Caleb tried one last time to control me. He stepped close and hissed, "You ruined me." Marisol stepped between us. "Back up," she said. Caleb's eyes were wild. "She tricked me with a fake deed." Marisol's voice was calm, almost kind. "No, Caleb. You tricked yourself by believing paper doesn't matter until it hurts you." He stared at her, then at me, then walked away fast like he was running from his own signature. The months after that were a slow unraveling. The prosecutor didn't move overnight, but the investigation started. An investigator called me, asked for copies. I sent everything. The porch video, the fake order, the locksmith affidavit, the title company fraud report, the forged power of attorney, the bank records, the deposition transcript excerpts. In April, Caleb's probation officer called me, which is a sentence I never thought would be part of my life. "Ms. Morgan," he said, "Mr. Rhodes is under conditions. If he violates the no contact or attempts further fraudulent filings, please notify us immediately." Conditions, violations. This wasn't civil anymore. This was a leash the law held, and for the first time in years, it wasn't around my neck. Caleb's business started bleeding. Permits got delayed when background checks flagged pending charges. Clients hesitated. A supplier cut his credit line. He tried to blame me to anyone who would listen, but the truth is, he'd finally met a system that didn't care about his stories. In June, he signed a plea deal. No jail, but restitution, probation, community service, and a record for attempted mortgage fraud and filing a false instrument. The deed wasn't fake. The fake was everything he tried to do to avoid it. And that's when the power reversal moved from courtroom to street. Because Caleb still had one last thread tied to my life: his boxes. He'd left tools and equipment in my garage after the divorce, claiming he'd pick them up later. Later was his way of keeping a foot in the door. And Marisol petitioned for a sheriff-supervised property retrieval with a strict no trespass order attached. Judge Garner granted it. Saturday, 9:30 a.m. Mid-July, the sheriff's SUV rolled onto Juniper Hollow Lane, sunlight flashing off the windshield. My heart still jumped when I saw it, because my body remembered Caleb's threats. But this time, the sheriff wasn't for me. It was for him. The deputy knocked, polite. "Ms. Morgan?" "Yes." "We're here for the supervised retrieval," he said. "Mr. Rhodes will have 20 minutes. He stays in the garage area only. No contact. If he violates, he's removed." I nodded, throat tight. Harper stood behind me, holding my hand, half curious, half afraid. Then Caleb's truck pulled up. He got out slowly, no suit, no smirk, just a man in a faded t-shirt, with shadows under his eyes. He looked at my house like he was trying to convince himself it still belonged to him. The deputy spoke to him first. "Mr. Rhodes, rules are clear. Garage only. 20 minutes. No contact." Caleb nodded, jaw clenched. He walked toward the garage, and for a second I saw the old Caleb, the one who believed he could push his way through any boundary. Then he saw the deputy's hand resting near his belt, and he adjusted. Because this time, the boundary had teeth. He carried boxes in silence. A drill, a toolbox, a folding ladder, old paint cans he'd abandoned like they were my problem. He moved fast, like he wanted the scene over before it burned into his pride. Harper tugged my hand. "Is Dad mad?" I swallowed. "Dad is facing consequences," I said quietly. Caleb heard that. His head snapped up. His eyes met mine for the first time in months. "You think you won," he said, voice low. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't perform. I just said, "I think you signed." He flinched like I'd struck him. The deputy called, 5 minutes. Caleb shoved the last box into his truck. He slammed the tailgate, breathing hard. He looked at Harper, and for a heartbeat, his face softened, like he wanted to say something that wasn't poison. But Diane wasn't there to coach him, and Trent wasn't there to spin him, and the deputy was there to stop him. So all he managed was, "Buy it, kiddo." Harper's voice was small. "Bye, Dad." Caleb climbed into his truck. Before he pulled away, he rolled down the window and said, "That deed, it shouldn't count." I stepped forward just enough for him to hear clearly. "It counted the day you signed it," I said. "It counted the day it was recorded, and it counts now." Caleb stared at me, then shook his head like denial was a religion. He drove away. The deputy handed me a final paper. "No trespass order is active," he said. "If he returns, call." I took it with steady fingers. When the SUV disappeared down the street, the air felt different. Lighter. Like someone had opened a window in my chest. Harper looked up at me. "So we're not moving?" "No," I said. "We're staying." "Forever?" she asked. "As long as you want," I said, and I meant it. That night after Harper fell asleep, I sat at my kitchen table with the certified copy of my deed in front of me. The paper looked boring, plain, black ink, legal description, recording stamp, no drama, no emotion. And yet, it held my entire life in place. Caleb had spent a year trying to convince me it wasn't real. He'd tried fear, he'd tried lies, he'd tried fake orders and fake documents and fake authority. But the truth didn't need to yell. The truth just needed to be recorded. And the lesson I learned, one I wish I'd learned before my heart broke, was this. People who don't read what they sign will always call reality fake when it stops obeying them. So read, record, protect. And if someone ever laughs at your deed like it's a joke, Let them laugh, right up until the law hands them the consequences in a sealed envelope.